students, welcome to Bosco Campus Vision YouTube channel of Kottayam Don Bosco College. I am Ranier, faculty member of PG Department of English. In this lecture series, I am discussing the paper European Fiction, which is the elective paper for MA English Semester 3 students under Kerala University. In this video lecture, I am discussing one of the critical essays prescribed for the fourth module of the paper European Fiction, and the essay is titled A Climate for Modernism, written by Peter Gay. So let's discuss about Peter Gay. Peter Gay, as you know, he was a German-born American educator born in 1923 in Berlin. He was a prominent cultural and intellectual historian and an ardent academician. His sense of intellectual adventure led him to furnish a series of literary works on the basis of Enlightenment, the Victorian middle classes, Sigmund Freud, and the Weimar culture. He had authored 25 books. Mr. Peter Gay was a refugee from Nazi Germany. He was devoted his career to exploring the social history of ideas, a quest that took him far from his original area of specialization. And his original area of specialization was Voltaire and the Enlightenment. So as I mentioned, he authored 25 books, including The Enlightenment and Interpretation, then Weimar Culture, The Outsider as Insider, then Modernism, The Lure of Heresy, From Baudelaire to Beckett and Beyond, The Dilemma of Democratic Socialism, etc. His notable work, The Enlightenment and Interpretation, rehabilitated the age of reason and its thinkers. In his another book, Weimar Culture, The Outsider as Insider, he makes a study on the cultural history of the Weimar Republic. He was an admirer of Sigmund Freud. Many of his works focused on the social impact of psychoanalysis. He wrote history books applying Freud's theories to history and German culture. His writing was generally favorable, though occasionally critical towards Freud's school of thought. Another important book penned by Peter Gay was Modernism, The Lure of Heresy. It is on the basis of the changes happened during the time of modernism in Europe. Another important work is The Dilemma of Democratic Socialism. A Climate for Modernism is the first chapter of Modernism, The Lure of Heresy. It is a 2007 book, and this is characteristically wide-lensed view of modernism. This book explores modernist movement from its beginning in Paris to its spread to Berlin and New York City, ending with its death in 1960s pop art. In this work, Peter Gay discusses art forms including literature, painting, architecture, music, cinema, and sculpture. He examines a mode of cultural creation which is itself highly contentious, dynamic, and resistant to precise definition, exploring how it was generated in different fields and how it was developed from the around 1840s, that means from the era of Gustave Flaubert and Charles Baudelaire up to the era of Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol, I hope you remember this name. He was a very famous American pop artist. Now, let's critically analyze the essay A Climate for Modernism, which is the first chapter of the book Modernism, The Lure of Heresy, penned by Peter Gay. Modernism entailed a revolt against the reign of absolute truth. So, let me remind you the meaning of the essay A Climate for Modernism. That means a climate that substantiates the development of modernism. And when coming to the book, Modernism, The Lure of Heresy. What do you mean by lure? Lure means something that is trying to tempt a person. And then heresy means an opinion or belief that is different from what is generally accepted to be true. So modernism is what? It is the lure of heresy. And usually modernists are champions of contingency and creative freedom. They challenged the realistic and rational conceptions of time as an orderly sequence of events and of space as an organized composition of figure and background. So naturally we can see that in literature during the time of modernism, when we going through the literature, we can see that it was a challenge. It was a challenge to the orderly sequence and organized composition. And modernism has been applied to innovations in every domain to any object that can be boast and modicum of originality. According to Peter Gay, modernism is far easier to exemplify than to define. Different forms like painting, sculpture, prose, poetry, music, dance, architecture. So all these are its exemplars. So the idea of modernism is a confusable one because it is confused by commentators, enthusiasts and criticizers of cultural industry. So why the term or why the idea of modernism is different for different people? It is a confusable term because it is confused by various commentators, criticizers or enthusiasts. This confusion reflects in the work of art and literature from mid-19th century. So here Peter Gay emphasizes the fact that modernism gives due respect for imaginative individuality, expressiveness, morality and psychological and social origins of politics and economics. So he pointed out all modern carriers with its own credentials. And for him, in modernism, what all feel the conviction that the untried is markedly superior to the familiar, or the rare to the ordinary, or the experimental to the routine. In this essay, The Climate for Modernism, Peter Gay emphasizes modernism is more than a casual cluster of avant-garde. Avant-garde means, I hope you remember the term avant-garde. When I was discussed in modernism, I mentioned you the term avant-garde, its explanation. So here simply we can say that avant-garde means new and experimental. So here in this essay, Peter Gay emphasizes modernism is more than a casual cluster of avant-garde protest. It produced a fresh way of seeing society and the artist's role in it. So in short, we can say that modernist style is the climate of thought, feeling and opinion of the artist. So climate for modernism. What is the climate? It is the climate of thought, feeling and opinion of the artist. In this essay, Peter Gay presents two defining qualities of modernism. Let's check what are these two features. The first one is modern works of art came from emotional satisfaction from the writer's status as heretics, defying established authorities. Okay, so that is the first point. What is that? Modernism or modernists derived emotional satisfaction from their status as heretics. Heretics means persons who differs in opinion from established religious dogma. And here, so modernists derived emotional satisfaction from their status as heretics and defying established authorities. So for example, we can say that the Russian musician Igor Stravinsky and American composer John Cage, these two figures insist traffic noise is more beautiful than classical compositions in music. So it seems very strange to us. But actually, this is a part of modernism. And another important quality of modernism according to Peter Gay is modern works' commitment to the principled self-scrutiny. In modern writers' work, we can see the subjective elements. That means when we consider the example, French painter Paul Gauguin's self-portraits took him to a madhouse. So, modernists gave importance to the explorations of inwardness and sovereignty of human subjectivity. That is second important quality of modernism. And finally, according to Peter Gay, in modernism, each artist demands artistic autonomy, personal sovereignty, and self-revelations. That means subjective elements. All these three are subjective elements. What do you mean by artistic autonomy? Whose is the last word in the case of a book? Definitely it is the word of the writer. So that is artistic autonomy. Then personal sovereignty. So a book or a piece of literature, it is the output of a person. So personal sovereignty. Then self-revelations. It is created out of his thoughts, feelings and expressions. That is the point. In modernism, each artist demands artistic autonomy, personal sovereignty and self-revelations. In this essay, Peter Gay acclaimed that modernists are not uniform. Ezra Pound introduces the slogan, "Make it new for modernism." And in the case of Charles Baudelaire, Gay considered Charles Baudelaire as the first hero of modernism because it is from the period of him poets made esoteric departure from traditional verse or decent subject matter. So up to the time of Charles Baudelaire, literature revolves around certain traditional principles. And when we analyze the case with Claude Debuzzy, he is a very famous music composer. He reacted against the mediocrity of the herd mind. In the case of Ludwig Mies, he is an architect and he treated bourgeois and Philistine as synonyms. August Strindberg opposed equal rights for women. In the case of Samuel Beckett and Harold Pinter, in their writings, especially in drama, they're trying to show the meaninglessness of life. But in the case of T.S. Eliot, he betrayed modernism because modernism subverted tradition. With modernism, poets made esoteric departure from traditional verse or decent subject matter. So what are the changes happened with the arrival of modernism? So with modernism, the writers, especially poets, made esoteric departure from traditional verse or decent subject matter. So what is traditional verse? So poetry should be metric, or poetry should be based on metrical pattern or rhythmical notes. So serious subjects to be treated. So all these ideologies, all these constraints are removed with the arrival of modernism. And in the case of novelists and dramatists, they began to investigate the characters' thoughts, feelings and psychological conflicts. So in the case of Peter Gay, he has a strong affinity towards the psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud. And here he analyzes modernism and he finds out that with the arrival of this modernism, the novelists and dramatists, they are trying to investigate the characters' thoughts, feelings and psychological conflicts. And some modernists were contemptuous of the intelligence, insight and taste of the middle class. But in the case of some others, they are anti-Semitic. Some other modernists exploited the implications of art for art's sake without fully subscribing its principles. And with the First World War, art and literature became sensational, deeply unsettling, stylistic experiments, class culture difference, etc. became the subject matter. Modernism thus created a climate in which society should accept drastic departure from settled artistic habits, entertain unfashionable options about beauty and tolerate conflicts among styles. So what is here also, Peter Gay is emphasizing the fact that modernism created such a kind of climate, and that in that climate in which society could accept drastic departure from settled artistic habits. So what were the settled artistic habit? So society trying to accept a departure from that. Then with the arrival of modernism, the writers or artists entertain unfashionable options about beauty. So when we traditionally we feel that the white has only beauty, but it is with the arrival of modernism we are trying to find out the beauty in the dark side also, and also tolerate conflicts among styles. The arrival of modernism, different styles are also introduced. And after the Second World War, a new form of art was introduced, that is pop art, which destroyed the separation of high and low art and have a concern with the inwardness and subjective self. So pop art, it is revolved around the subjectivity of the artist. And the very famous pop artist Andy Warhol, according to him, what gave life to modernism is its subversive and quality-minded discriminations between high and low. And this essay presents a thrilling pageant of heretics that includes Oscar Wilde, Pablo Picasso, James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, T.S. Eliot, Andy Warhol, etc. So modernism, the Lure of Heresy, is Peter Gay's great endeavor since Freud exposed the shocking modernist rebellion that began in 1840s, transformed art, literature, music and film with its assault on traditional forms. So beginning the study with Charles Baudelaire, Gay traces the revolutionary path of modernism from its Parisian origins to its emergence as the dominant cultural movement of the world. In short, we can say that according to Peter Gay, the obituary for modernism is often exquisite and always new. So my dear students, I hope you understood so far. Do the homework and send me through WhatsApp. Thank you. Have a nice time.